Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jodie from Decoris Vintage Design, and today I'm going to be letting you into my process. I hesitate to call this one a tutorial because it's one of those pieces where I start and don't know where I finish up, and then I just keep layering and adding colours until I'm happy with the outcome. So if you want to see how I do that and you want to see how I achieve this very rustic but kind of girly piece here behind me, then make sure you stay tuned for that. I started today's piece by applying a layer of Lemonade by Dixie Belle. So this is a really soft yellow, almost a white with a very soft yellow tinge, and I applied it without water. I applied it over my pulls. I do like to paint over my pulls, that's entirely up to personal preference, and I put on a nice thick base layer. Personally, I love to apply base layers. I just think it makes it easier to blend the paints and layer over the top of them. And then thought, actually, I want to have a play with blending some colours. So here I have Amethyst and I have Plum Crazy, and I'm just mixing those together to get a more of a fuchsia kind of purple colour, just a softer purple colour. And then once I had mixed this, I decided to go in with even more Plum Crazy, and yeah, I'm just feeling playful this week. I just wanted to have a play, and then I mixed the Plum Crazy with Lucky Lavender, and you know, just to see how that turned out, and it gave me this really soft pink colour that I loved. And then I also mixed a little bit of Plum Crazy with Barn Red. Wasn't sure how this was going to turn out actually, but it actually gave me more of a softer red, a bit more of a pinkier red. So these are going to be my main colours this week. I also added a little bit of Peony to my original mix just because I felt it was a bit too purple and I wanted to make it a bit pinkier. Okay, so now they're all blended and mixed, it's time to do a bit of painting. I started by applying my darkest purple at the bottom there, and then went in with my medium purple, which was the Plum Crazy and Lavender mix, and just roughly painted that over the top. I'm not using much water. The aim is not to get a perfect blend here at all. I just want to apply some colours, just have a play, see where we end up. I am using a synthetic brush for this, but you can honestly use whatever brush you want. If you use a natural bristled one, a chip brush or whatever, you'll get more texture. So over the top here, I actually applied a new mix colour. I just wanted something a little bit lighter, so I just took some of my Lucky Lavender mix and Plum Crazy mix and just added more Lucky Lavender to get that lighter colour. And then at the top here I am applying my Barn Red. I really should make names for these instead of describing the colours every time, but I am using Barn Red and my Plum Crazy mix at the top there. I'm just getting an idea here where I want the colours. I'm just trying to figure out what's happening here, and you know, what kind of variants of shades of purples and pinks that we're going to be having on this piece. If you do want more of a perfect blend, then make sure you use a synthetic brush and also use a water mister to get that paint moving and to get it blending. So because I'm a lover of texture, I'm sure all of you guys must know that by now, because I love texture, I am not really using any water for this, and I'm just adding bits of colour here and there and everywhere. I don't know why I felt the need to sing then, I'm sorry. So here I still have no plan as to where I'm going with this. I'm just setting myself up for the rest of the piece and for the extra layers that I'm going to be putting on top of these colours. So as you can see here, I'm also bringing some of that barn red mix down into the bottom. You can see it's not perfectly blended. You can see brush strokes, you can see different bits of colour, and that's absolutely fine for this. I'm just, as I say, I'm just being very playful with this piece this week, and I encourage you guys to do the same. Sometimes it's just very therapeutic and really nice just to grab colours, especially colours that you may not even be very familiar with. Pinks and purples aren't my colours, if you know what I mean. They aren't the colours that I'm used to, but it's still fun to have a play. So then I just thought, actually, I'm going to grab my water mister and I'm just going to spray it. Why not? Let's just see what happens. So I just gave this a really good spritz and just started to let it drip a little bit. And then I grabbed a lint-free rag and just started tapping. I was just curious to see what this might feel like. Okay, as it turns out, it didn't feel good. I didn't really like it that much. I loved the texture from the rag, but I didn't love the drips so much. So I've just sped this a little bit up because I just kind of went in there again and did something really, really similar, but I did it without the drips instead of... so I just ragged it instead of allowing all those drips, just so I've still got that texture, but I don't have all of those spindly little drips on the piece. I then grabbed some Mermaid Tail, which is a green turquoisey colour, and I really saturated my brush with water and put a tiny little bit of Mermaid Tail on my brush and just started brushing that around some of those edges. Again, don't really know what's happening here, if I'm being totally honest. I'm trying to explain my reasoning, and I guess it's because the turquoise is quite a contrasting colour to the red and the pink, so it would have added a lot of drama. So again, still being playful, still just trying to figure out what I'm doing, and I'm just dragging the Mermaid Tail around those edges there very softly. So it's very translucent, you can barely even see the turquoise in it, but it's going to help this piece look faded and rustic. After I had applied it, I went in there with my rag and started patting again just to soften it up and make it look even more worn and rustic. And I went in there and did it on top of the drawers as well. So you want to make sure that you rag before you dry, so you work in sections. And just make sure that as soon as you finish that section, then you go in with your rag and start using the ragging technique before it is totally dry, because obviously otherwise you're not going to get the texture that it gives. So just take your time, have a play, see what happens. Still not totally satisfied at this point. I think I wasn't loving it, if I'm being totally honest. I was struggling a little bit at this point. I was probably at that point where I should have walked away, but I didn't. But I went in with more Mermaid Tail. At first I started focusing it around the middle of those doors, and just used the ragging technique again. And then I kind of was really liking the way that Mermaid Tail was looking. So I went in there and very randomly patted it all over the doors, and then went in and ragged again. It's a little bit thicker this time, but as I rag, I go in and add a little bit of water just to make it look more translucent. And I'm thinking, I really want this piece to look like it's had loads and loads of different paint jobs on it at some point, you know, like old Moroccan doors and things like that. So I just went in and decided, actually, this is going to be a layered piece. That's what I decided at this point. Still not totally satisfied. I'm thinking, oh gosh, I'm getting myself into a bit of a place here. I don't know what else to like describe it as. I went in with some Putty, which is a beigey colour, and started applying that over the top as well in the same way that I did the Mermaid Tail, and I was hoping that this would just tone down all of those strong pigments of the colours and just make it look a little bit more faded. But at this point I did decide, after applying the Putty, that it was time to walk away for the day, and I went home, and then I came back in the next day with fresh eyes. So I came in the next day all fresh, and I decided to apply some woodgie bends. I always heat my woodgie bends up before I apply them to a piece of furniture, especially because this one has a curve to it. Once they're heated, they can bend, and then I use a top quality wood glue to apply them. You can get 10% off your woodgie bends in the US and the UK if you use my links below using discount code JODY10. So I also like to heat them up once they're on the furniture, just to make sure that they are nice and firm to the furniture, and also help them bond much more quickly. I then decided to sand using some 120 grit sandpaper, albeit not the best paper in the world, so it was probably actually a higher grit because it was quite cheap. But anyway, and I started sanding in different directions, so up and down, left and right, and I'm trying to just get a crosshatch effect with the grain with the sandpaper, to make it look like the wood grain starting to peek through, and also to start softening these colours up and bring some of the colours out underneath as well. So this is just going to help me tone this piece down a little bit. I'm using some Gemstone Mousses now, and before I get started here, I want to give you a little tip. My Gemstone Mousse here has dried up a little bit. If your mousse dries up, then just apply a little bit of water and give it a good stir, and then you will see it starts to go back to its mousse-like texture. So first I put a little bit of the Golden Gem Mousse onto a sheet, and then I decided to mix with a little bit of Garnet, which is a really strong red colour. So what this will give me is a really nice rose gold kind of colour, and it will just warm that gold up a little bit. And then with an artist brush I applied to my woodgie bends. Okay, so in retrospect here, I should have probably painted the woodgie bends before I applied them to the furniture. However, that being said, this is going to be a rustic piece, so if a little bit of the Gemstone Mousses go around the edges a little bit, then it just looks more rustic and natural anyway. I can kind of get away with it, but if you're going for a much more smoother look, then it can be easier to paint them before if you're just painting them one colour. I also speckled some of these Gemstone Mousses very roughly on all of the pulls, again to get that rustic patina kind of look, as though it had started to chip and fade away. I then continued to apply some of the mousse at the top edges of the drawers and doors, again just very roughly applying it, and I began to spritz with water to make it drip and to make it, this is called wet distress, and this will actually just distress it and make it look more scratchy, more, like it's broken up, that it's fading. And then I just use my water mister and rag then just to remove any excess water and soften up the Gemstone Mousses as well. And now it's time for waxing, one of my favourite parts. I think it's a really underrated part of the process. So just with a chip brush here, I have Best Dang wax in black. I haven't applied any clear wax underneath. I've just gone straight in there with my black wax, and I am applying this all around those edges. So this is going to help the piece look even more aged, even more rustic, and it's just going to you know, bring it together a little bit as well. So as I'm applying the black wax, I am softening up those edges and bringing it up a little bit away from the edges, just to make it look more realistic. I don't want a harsh line, I don't want, you know, harsh blocks of the wax. I want it to look soft and like it's organically, you know, started to age on the furniture. And then go in with white wax, and white wax is the perfect wax for softening up the pieces. So I'm going back and forth between my black and white wax, and white wax can actually be used to blend black wax as well. I don't know if you guys know that waxes can be blended. So the white wax is going to make the middle of the piece look old, in the sense that it's faded, and the dark wax is going to make the piece look aged in the sense that it's getting a little bit grungy. And I am blending those together to make it look like there are no harsh edges or anything, and that the piece is naturally supposed to look like that. Alright, so I have a paint scraper now, and remember this is meant to look like a chippy Moroccan door that's had loads of paint jobs and has started to chip away. So obviously we need a bit of wood poking through on this. So I just used a paint scraper just to start chipping away some of that paint. Just go for it, guys. How many times do you get to, you know, grab something like this and really just go to town on a piece of furniture? Call it stress relief, whatever, I don't know, just have fun with it. And the only other thing that I would say is that I waited a day before I did this, which Dixie Belle paint can cure really, really quickly. So I've had a little bit of a hard work doing this, so it's much better just to go in and chip furniture like this before it's totally, you know, as it's just dried, rather than leaving it for any amount of time, because then you'll just make work harder for yourself. And here's the finished look. This was quite the head scratcher, quite the process it went through, but I'm happy with the finished look. Let me know your thoughts. And as always, guys, you can grab all the products today in the description below, and have a lovely time painting. Bye bye.